Just a month ago, we held our first research summit on energy and the energy transition, and I'm glad to see a number of faces back again from that summit. Today we're talking about probably the most rapidly moving topic we could bring up, which is artificial intelligence. Just this week, I attended a meeting with other vice presidents for research in Washington, D.C., where we talked about a lot of things, but we talked about federal priorities. And one of the ones that was mentioned is artificial intelligence and the integration of artificial intelligence into so much of what we do. And so this rapidly moving landscape is going to be with us for a while, and I think we all know that. And so today is our first look into this as a campus from a research perspective. And so I've invited 5 researchers from across campus to join us to give some comments from their perspective on this field. And so what we'll do is we'll hear from those researchers for about 35 to 40 minutes, answering a series of questions. Then what we'll do is we're going to turn things over to Eric Hawley, who is the Chief Information Officer for USU, who's going to talk about a new tool his team has built to help USU faculty navigate this AI world. After that, Danielle Zinga, our external proposal specialist in the College of Science, will walk you through some opportunities that are appearing that we're tracking and want to make sure you're aware of for AI in research in terms of external funding. And so with that, I would invite all of our panel members to come up and grab a chair. I'm going to ask my tech staff, where's the second mic? Okay, got it. And which one's the stronger one? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to start the mic down here with Kevin. And just a minute, I'm going to grab my question list. Okay, so we're going to ask each of you within a couple of minutes to briefly introduce yourself, what your area of expertise is, and what is your involvement with AI, either in developing AI or in using AI tools. So, Kevin?
Okay, so I'm Kevin Moon from the Math and Stat Department. I am an associate professor there. Got tenure last year, so it's still new enough to keep talking about it. But my background is quite varied. Most of my degrees are in electrical engineering, and I also did a postdoc in the genetics department. I've done research. Did it turn off? Okay, so we're good. I've done research in a variety of applications. I guess I'll get into that a little bit. But I will also mention that I was named recently as one of the AI 100 in Utah. So basically a group of business leaders got together, decided to determine who are the top people in AI in the city of Utah, and I was selected as one of those 100 people. My area of expertise is machine learning, artificial intelligence. My research is mostly focusing on developing new methods in AI for better analysis of data. So there's a strong data perspective from where I'm coming from. And I've done research applications in biomedical areas, as well as astronomy, navigation, ecology, finance, and probably some other things I'm forgetting about. I also teach in this area. All my classes are machine learning focused, but a little bit more from a mathematical perspective, trying to build researchers in machine learning that can make a contribution to the field.
I cannot top that. Can you all hear me well?
Speak up.
Okay. I'm Han Nguyen. I'm an assistant professor in the Instructional Technology and Learning Sciences Department in Civic Education. And my AI research is more on the applied science, so I develop AI technology for chatbots or an integrated dashboard for students doing science. I'm here on an NSF-funded project that we're working on developing different chatbots to help kids learn different perspectives about marine ecosystems. And then I also have active collaborations with colleagues in computer science, data science, and design to develop different AI tools to support learning in these processes.
I'm Shar Jones, so I'm a professional practice assistant professor over in data analytics and information systems. So my background in the professional practice side of this, I worked for, now at this point, about a decade in data science, in a variety of roles in R&D, a bunch of different companies, building a lot of these models as well, but again, more from the industry side of things. That was mostly in the satellite imagery space, on retail analytics. From there, though, kind of transitioned back into the university world, so I did my PhD here, and then now I'm working in the department where I teach a lot of our machine learning courses. I also mentor in the Analytics Solutions Center, so this will be my shameless plug for that, where we help to kind of build some of these solutions, work with researchers, external organizations, whoever has problems or needs in this space of AI, data science, honestly, tech in general. We help to develop and build these solutions. So, yeah, really excited to be here and collaborate with y'all.
My name is Brent Chamberlain. I am an associate professor in landscape architecture and environmental planning. As a way of introduction, I'm sort of a disciplinary polyglot. I have 4 degrees from what USU would consider 4 different colleges. So I do have a computer science degree. I have a lot of more applied work towards that. I'm leading a project through NSF right now. It's a convergence grant, so it's actually focused on AI applications toward understanding how people with disability are influenced by the infrastructure that we have in our transportation environment, and a whole range of other kinds of pieces. We'll see where we get with that today. I think it's good.
Thank you so much. I am Sri Sharan. I'm a new assistant professor in the Department of Geosciences and the College of Science. I actually only started here early last year. Before that, I was, my sort of background at the undergraduate and master's level are from geological engineering, so I'm kind of an engineer by training, and then I kind of moved to the geosciences. What I do is a combination of experimental, numerical, and machine learning applications to earthquake physics. So what that means in practice is that I try to understand how and why earthquakes behave the way they do. And more recently, sort of my pivot, rather than formal training in AI, or more specifically in machine learning, came during the pandemic, actually, because I was, during my PhD, I was being trained in experimental earthquake mechanics, and when everything shut down, I sort of had this bit of a slight existential crisis. I was like, I have so much data from my PhD, I don't know what to do with this, and let's start learning machine learning and see what we can get from that. And so one of the sort of major contributions to the field that pushed me into this AI expertise, I guess, would be that we used a few different machine learning techniques to successfully forecast earthquakes that we generate on the experimental scale. And so one of the questions, or rather I should say pipe dream, is how far can I push this forward, taking it from the lab to earthquakes that might occur in nature. So that's kind of where I'm at. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Okay. Great start. Now I'm going to start thinking about how we're using AI. And so, from your perspectives in your different fields, what are some of the most innovative and impactful ways that you see research either growing or taking advantage of AI tools? And maybe if one of you wants to start.
Sure, I'll jump in.
Okay.
So, in terms of landscape architecture, and I also pit into environmental planning, so we're looking at how we do a broad area sort of plans and designs. But also, a lot of the projects happen at local site level, so it's very, very much an applied discipline. The generative AI work is very much linked to some of the new ideas that are happening within the field. So content generation in particular, the ideation, sort of the support, the symbiosis between human and machine in terms of ideation is really, really useful. So taking different sort of images or different sort of design ideas and different constructs and putting them into a place and thinking about what would that image, or what would that image beget, right? What sort of ideas and concepts are there? But I think also in the field that we're in, we're really trying to understand that human relationship. And one of the tricky things is we have a lot of data that are around us, but we're missing a lot of essential data, particularly things like equity data. So the project we're working on is trying to identify infrastructure like curb ramps and curb cuts and crosswalks and different infrastructure at bus stops that impact people with disabilities. And this is one of those gaps where we typically as a society don't put enough money to getting those kind of data to understand how they affect a range of different people. So the benefit of having AI is that we can use different sorts of techniques and algorithms and otherwise to collect those data more quickly in ways that we wouldn't normally be able to try to do what we can to align that infrastructure with the needs of the users. So computer vision models are certainly one of those kinds of cases.
I'll build on that too. With a more kind of general statement about it is, one of the things that I've seen really in recent, like what, 2-3 years that we've had this like ChatGPT moment, is that all of a sudden I would say, you know, because I've been coming from the machine learning space, we've been working with all sorts of different data sources, but now everybody's starting to recognize that you have data available to you in a lot of different formats, right? As Brent said, right, vision. You can now work with imagery pretty confidently. But the big thing now, or at least recently, is text. Recognize that any source of text that you might have, any sort of text that you're collecting is data. And that now extends as well to the same architectures, the same approaches extend to audio, video. I mean, anything else you can think of that is information that me as a human or I as a human can collect, that is also not data that we can operate with. And so this is what a lot of researchers as well as industries and companies are recognizing right now, and why they're all kind of jumping on this AI moment, because if you think about it, we just have a new tool that unlocks this whole world of information you've been collecting that isn't just, you know, numbers in a spreadsheet. So.
I can add on to it from the education and development side of things. So because of all these new technology, there's a lot of conversation about developing AI literacy and the capacity to work with AI, because the way that we collaborate with AI is going to change, and students interacting with these tools also need different capacities to learn how to evaluate information and regulate what they're learning. And so there's a lot of conversation in the edtech space about how do we support these processes and support students to collaborate with these tools better. And then the other piece of it is using the tools as a brokerage between human and human relationships. So an example was a tool that we built recently for the AI, not so much to be the mentor for students, but to just reflect back to students what they think they know and what they think they don't know, and then use that information to give to the mentors and facilitators so that they can ask better questions. So the idea and the question there is not to use AI to replace the human, but how do we use it to augment the human workflow so that it becomes more productive and supportive for learning.
I'll build a little bit off of what Sharad also said, in that we're seeing an increase in the usage of maybe what you could call non-traditional data, or unstructured data is often what we call it in machine learning side. Some examples where I've been seeing some big advances in the last few months that aren't even directly related to LLMs, large language models like ChatGPT, are examples in chemistry or in biology, where they take some of the underlying principles for these large machine learning models and they extend those same principles to these spaces where it's hard for humans to kind of think about. So a little brief example is, you take two molecules in chemistry, how different are they? Machines and computers, they think in terms of numbers, and so it needs to know, it needs some measure of how different or how similar two molecules are. As humans, we can't really define that very well, but with some of these architectures and models, you can make the machine automatically learn that based on some specific goals. Maybe you're focusing on chemical properties, so you wanted to say how similar they are based on some properties they share or don't share, for example.
Thank you so much. I think that's an excellent segue to a couple of examples that I can think of in our area, which is in earthquakes, going kind of similar to what Sharad said, and also this comparison between a couple of molecules. One of the things that was really innovative and exciting, I think, in the earthquake field is trying to, you have years, maybe decades of seismological information that were all on paper back when seismometers used to be these spinning drums, right? So you have almost a century worth of data of that kind. What can you do with that? You can digitize them and locate earthquakes from the past 100 years, which was previously not possible just because of the sheer volume of data and so the ability to do that has really increased our ability to look into the past and build historical catalogs. But I just want to say another sort of example is in the area of earthquake detection broadly and phase picking, which is basically you have seismic analysts who are going in and picking individual waveforms that come in during an earthquake and telling, giving a cutoff essentially for saying, okay, this is a waveform, this is a waveform, this is a waveform, and so on for multiple different seismometers. Something called a transformer, which is what ChatGPT is essentially built on, transformers. We have now earthquake transformers that can do these processes of picking these phases as well as trying to determine very precise locations for earthquakes through literally thousands or hundreds of seismometers, which is previously not possible using these types of transformers. And as a consequence, some of the things we've been able to do is look into what would have previously been considered noise and discarded in these seismic signals, right? And we're able to see significantly smaller earthquakes than were previously possible just by visualizing it through the naked eye or even using what used to be sophisticated algorithms in the past. So there's a lot of improvements that have happened in this area as well.
Great insights from your different areas. I guess I'd ask for your expertise now. Who's driving the field forward? Is it academia is driving ideas, or in ways industry's driving this? We're partners. We're all in a giant race to see how we can incorporate AI. I guess I'd just like your perspectives on this, because later I'm going to ask you what you're reading and what you're thinking about to keep up. And so understanding the landscape helps us think about where all of us need to pay attention to really pull out key facts. So I'm going to ask, and we can start again with Sri, or we can move down the list, doesn't matter.
Okay, start. Yeah, that's a really excellent question. I think by the nature of my field, which is sort of disaster risk management and resilience, it often happens that it is the case that academia, or more broadly, maybe I should say nonprofit, federal or state or academic entities are the ones that are kind of leading the charge. I do know that there are use cases in industry, maybe in insurance companies, for example, for underwriting risk, or in tech companies, because you have smartphones that have accelerometers and gyroscopes, and so you can detect earthquakes, for example, in your smartphones. And so if industry is doing it, the extent to which these improvements are happening in the industry are often not, let's say, transparent to us. And so in that sense, I think academia is probably leading the charge, or federal agencies that are invested in maybe energy or other things are what I see as leading the charge.
In the disciplines that I would sort of represent, I think there are kind of two use cases. So the one in the application side, I would say are largely driven by corporate, by private sector. So the data generation aspect, particularly because they have the data sets that they're training, and those data sets are being used to generate new images, new text, new that kind of stuff. So for instance, Adobe is one of those companies that our students use all the time. And a lot of people didn't know for years and years that when you save an image and you put it to the cloud, that Adobe has access to train on that image. So for years and years and years, we've been stockpiling all these data. That's just something that universities don't have in terms of that kind of application. So I think from that particular view, in the architectural realm as well, looking at sort of information modeling kind of pieces, the sort of geospatial kind of aspect that's being driven heavily by industry. I think the flip side of that is when we do look at some of these cases where there's not the funding or money to be had in developing data or developing new ideas, that's where the university is really kind of leading that piece. So equity is really a difficult challenge that we're faced with, and typically it doesn't come with huge dollars unless they're government centered, right? So that kind of work is I think being pushed largely by the academic NGO side of things.
No, I think
really hit the nail on the head with that one, is we see that, and I think the internal expectation is that industry is driving these fields forward. And to some extent, credit where credit's due, it's the access to a massive amount of data and a lot of capital, right, venture capital especially, that can let us, or let industry, I'll say, develop these large-scale models, or these foundational models as they start to be called. But yeah, you have so many other problems that end up in this kind of like niche world that they're not going to be incentivized to solve. And so the way I kind of see it is this is a kind of branching mechanism, is that industry will continue to drive forward a lot of foundational technologies, and that will create a lot of opportunities for then academics to spin off and create a lot of really interesting, relevant, and impactful applications that maybe don't have the funding or incentive there. But yeah, it is certainly true that industry has a lead in that sense purely through the capital. I mean, a lot of the work I was doing, a lot of the research I was doing back when I was in that space wasn't really possible without massive amounts of compute. And you can certainly get that in a university environment, an academic environment, but it's much quicker when I can just say, hey, this is the task I want to do, and then they can get money for it, right? That is a little bit different than a funding mechanism. So in that sense, yeah, there's two sides of it, but I think they can work and do work in some sense kind of harmoniously. So I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts, so I apologize.
Well, I agree with a lot of that sentiment. The only thing I'll add is like there's a model that has a combination of industry to develop the tool and researchers. So if you look at education funding opportunities in the last 2 years, like the IES Institute of Education Scientists released a call last year for what they call transformative education research. And it's basically that you need a team of researchers, industry partners, and also school districts to be able to create innovative transformative technology solutions. And so I think there's increasing understanding that it's not working in silo and there's collaboration across those fields.
Yeah, I agree with what's been said here too, that industry is definitely pushing forward a lot of the advances here. You probably all heard of OpenAI, they're one of the big names now, Google of course as well, because they're the ones that they can afford to spend their millions of dollars training these models. That it's a little bit harder to justify that in a grant to the NSF here, right? But at the same time, because of those high costs, that people obviously don't always want to be spending that amount of money to make any kind of advance in AI. And also there's always the concern about environment, right? Where this cost is often in compute power, which means that's electrical power consumption here. And so there's lots of innovation that's happening in academic as well as industry areas on trying to make things not so large. You've always got the people that are always trying to make the biggest thing, so to say. This is the largest model ever, they get notoriety for that. But there's plenty of other people who try to make things more reasonable, things that can run on your smartphones, that are more accessible to everyone. And you see some advances in academia as well that are leading some of those aspects. So just as an example, something that came out within the last month, there was an innovation in the way these models were trained that came out of Stanford that incorporates human feedback in a different way than OpenAI is currently doing in all these other models, that should reduce the amount of data and the amount of computing time that's required by a substantial factor, making even just training these large models more accessible to medium-scale operations, perhaps even universities. And so you're going to see a mixture of things. Probably industry is going to be maybe the main driver, but you're going to have plenty of these other offshoots and branches as the way to run with it.
Can I say one other quick follow-up to that?
Yeah, it's not order
No, sorry, we're breaking in order. For all of us here, I think what's important is even if industry is driving it, industry is very hungry for people that are trained to do this kind of work across a whole range of different disciplines. So I think it's important really to recognize, yes, we may not be able to produce some of these new models and have access to all these data, but for instance, one of my recent students, Charlotte, was on this PhD committee, ended up going into corporate to work for a design firm, and they were really excited to have somebody who can think about the way AI might influence that company. I mean, I have colleagues from dietetics. I mean, there's so much work out there right now at each individual training and reinforcing the individuals that are working with. It would be remarkable to really think about how this integrates within workforce development, particularly within the region. I think it's really important that this is recognizing this is a major event I'm not going to say extinction event, but something along those lines, right? It's a shocking event, and to recognize the place in that and where we can be in facilitating that process and navigating it with our students, our communities, otherwise, I think is really useful.
I was going to throw a point on this too. I really like this idea because this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently, is that by their nature, a lot of the newer models we're developing are democratizing learning and democratizing, the ability to identify or build these technical skill sets. And so I think more and more importantly, and this is branching a little out of the research more to the education side, but I think more and more it's going to be critical that students have an understanding of their subject matter expertise. Like, what is the thing that makes them uniquely capable of solving a problem? And that I don't think will necessarily be just solely having a technical skill set, right? It's going to be a landscape architect that now knows these AI tools and knows how to leverage or build their own tools, right? They're not going to be relying on the tech team to kind of take it from them. So I think that is a really core piece of what we're getting now.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify what Kevin was saying when people mentioned open source models. So when you talk about OpenAI, a lot of people just think about ChatGPT and that's the end of it, but there's a lot more open source things. So Google just released GameL yesterday, and llama-based models have also been open source the last year or two. So there are a lot of opportunities to play around with smaller, more modular models to develop your own community discipline.
I'm going to pick up on one term that was mentioned that I just want to emphasize. Meeting with vice presidents for research all over the country again this week and listening to government representatives, this workforce development issue is incredibly important. And so as we think about both our teaching and research missions, they are going to be, the language we use around them is going to use the words workforce development. And so we should continue to think about that. So I wanted to also jump in here and preempt this next question with an introduction of some others who've joined us today. We're going to talk about opportunities and challenges at USU in AI. And some of the folks I've invited here today are from our IT area of campus. And so I just want to mention Neil Nicolaisen, who is the head of our IT security, is also one of the AI Top 100 in Utah. And I'm very proud to say Utah State University has 2 individuals on that list, and I think the U has 2 as well. So I was happy to see that we were keeping right up with our peers. So with that being the case, you've got the Vice President for Research, IT infrastructure. I'm going to ask each of you, what are the opportunities for USU faculty that you see, and what are the challenges that you see from a faculty perspective that I and for example, Eric Hawley need to be thinking about on campus? And so I can start with you, I think, since you have the mic in hand, or you can hand it to Kevin and make him talk first.
Challenges and opportunities at USU specifically, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So let's think opportunities, of course, first. So within some of the main opportunities that exist here, I think, are also somewhat generic opportunities with respect to your specific field, in that there are probably more tools now available for analyzing and accessing the data and advancing your research. And associated with that, there's going to be perhaps funding opportunities related to that, which will be talked about more later in the summit, so we'll get into that. And yet, I'll shift there to challenges, in that there might be some expectations that there's a ton of hype that's also accompanying generative AI and other machine learning things right now. And so with that, you might get the expectation of, well, okay, all my data problems are solved now, and I can just say, here, ChatGPT, here's my data, do whatever you do and give me my problem. And in fact, a potential sponsor of ours basically asked us that question this week. He said no. And it doesn't work that way. And mostly the way things are going to be working is, unless someone has gone and specifically built a model for your kinds of problem, your kind of data, it's probably not going to work out of the box. Unless you're doing some pretty basic data analysis skills or methods. So that's one challenge, is that tools may not exist yet that are easy for you to use. You may still need to probably talk with a data scientist or someone else with that experience to get things working for you in that way. That said, it's easy. There are probably other tools available to them. Other challenges are, depending on how you use these tools, the hallucination aspect that you may have heard of can be either a blessing or a curse. And the blessing side is if you're trying to use it to generate ideas. It's kind of this additional creativity that can help you. On the curse side is that you don't want to be creative with references, for example. You've probably seen that where it makes up entire references. And another application that, from our field that we see, the use case of these generative tools is in coding and in programming. Utah State University has free access as a university to GitHub Copilot, which basically integrates ChatGPT within your coding environment. You can use it to ask questions, to improve your code. And it's amazing, it works great most of the time. Since I try to keep up on the AI side from the AI research perspective, and so I see more and more, a little bit more pessimism creeping in to counteract the hype in terms of a lot of these tools. So there's a research paper that showed, for example, that most software developers that are starting to use GitHub Copilot, the amount of times they had to rewrite their code went up. So their code is good for their own system, but it doesn't integrate well within the broader system still. Now, advances can help with those kinds of things. You know, maybe a few years down the road that won't be an issue, but it's basically what I'm seeing still is that humans aren't in danger. Going back to, I think Sharad said it, what someone said it here is that we still need your expertise, and these generative AI tools still need your expertise. In our area, we call it a domain expert. You're an expert in your domain of area. And so, challenges, opportunities, I guess. Maybe that's. You guys can provide this.
I'll just add to the second piece, but the other idea is around biases, because they can reflect like the dominant text or data or whatever that they're trained on. So the case in point is that they might not represent like minoritized experiences very well. When you have students talk to these like models, they might spill off stereotypes. We have cases when they talk about climate change or whatever, and they say that most of like you people living in Southern California are like undocumented immigrants and stuff like that. And just need to look out for and also involve human in the loop to spot check these biases as well as incorporate these experiences that may not be represented in the mainstream data set.
Yeah, I'd say biggest challenge is how big of a server Eric Colley would let me build in my office. That's the only challenge.
As much as you want, baby.
Okay, yeah, then we're good. Yeah, challenge gone. Okay, yeah, no, I'd say, really challenge and opportunity together in one that I see the single thing I think is most critical right now is interdisciplinary work. I think we've harped on this for a long time now, but now more than ever, these tools are starting to blur the lines very much. Right? Look at the diversity of experiences and backgrounds in this panel alone. Everybody's intersecting in this space and treating it as siloed entities where, hey, I work in this space only in this space. Makes sense to me. I'm a perfect example of this. Working in data science, we always view ourselves as kind of jack of all trades because people have data problems and I could just go work on their data problem. They peel that piece off for me to work on. But what we need now is actually people all in the room together helping us develop, build, design, question, solutions that are coming out. So that's, I think, from a universal perspective, the biggest thing is figuring out how to effectively integrate those people, reduce friction points so that collaboration is much, much easier because we'll just need it to scale.
I still don't know what to say in terms of opportunities. There's so many things here. I think there are a couple of things that are really important as we think about faculty, those trying to seek funding. The federal agencies right now are sort of spewing money, right? Trying to find places for this to go. And there's so many different opportunities across so many places. I cannot keep up with just like the SCICE, the computer science sort of directorate. Just the sheer number of calls that are coming out and solicitations and so on and so forth. It's sort of mind-blowing as an opportunity. Obviously, that can be a challenge as well. But I think to Sharon's point, the other piece is acknowledging how connected we are, not just within a university, how we can be, but also outside. So these collaborators that I'm working with on this project, are from University of Washington, University of Illinois Chicago, and a colleague at Easter Seals, which is a really large, one of the largest sort of healthcare NGOs for people with disabilities. We're in all 4 time zones in the continental US, and we just happened to meet because of a few emails that went around about some ideas, and here we are. So those kinds of projects, not just AI, but interdisciplinary, this is the whole convergence effort that's happening. I mean, NSF generated a new directorate, which hasn't seen in 3 decades. So I think those are things to try to keep a pulse of what's happening, because this pulse is going like 200 beats a minute. So there are so many opportunities, and it's just trying to figure out through the noise that's there where we can sort of come together on. One of the things is a challenge. I'll sort of strike back. I don't know how many of you have kids at home that use AI, but my kids love the image generator, and they love writing, like 1-page stories about totally random things, like a pickle with a cape flying on a hippopotamus, and it's hilarious. What's interesting about it is that they have some of these concepts and ideas, but then all this content can get generated so quickly, and how do we translate that sort of thinking, what's going to happen in a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 3 years from now, and what the students are looking at, and how they're thinking through the kind of content that they're observing. And I'll go back to the programming example. Just today I was working with an undergrad student who's trying to collect some data online about where the locations of climbing routes are in Logan Canyon. Because we're interested in working on a project that they're trying to site cell towers through Logan Canyon. And I'm interested in the visual impacts of that, right? So this student was trying to say, well, who could benefit from this in terms of the safety thing? We sat for quite a while trying to use ChatGPT to program this, and it kind of blew my mind, because at some point I'm like, I should have just coded this on my own, right? And the interesting point to that is that if we have a generations coming through, I think it's really important to help tease out where these benefits are of the generative work or of the data analytics work, because often we might miss the whole fundamental question that we really need to ask and what methods are there, just because the complexity of these models seem to be beyond our intuition when we're first learning this stuff. So I think as educators, that's one of the challenges I would kind of throw out, because it's most relevant to something that just happened today.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not so sure what I can add to this point. I will try.
You can use a GPT to find
I know, right? In terms of opportunities, trying to be very specific to USU, a couple of things of note I think I would probably point out. The first one being, again, repeating what many others have said, is the ability to do interdisciplinary research, to bring 2 people in the room, one who's a domain expert and one who has this incredible awareness of how to actually apply AI, machine learning models intelligently to this problem in the domain, because the domain expert may know that there's a problem, but they may not quite know how to pose it as a problem that can be solved using machine learning. So we have that opportunity here, just like what's happening right now in this room. A second thing I do want to point out that's very, very specific is free access to the CHPC at the U, right? This is a supercomputer that anyone who's a PI at USU can use free nodes on. I'm not saying you're going to build a ChatGPT-esque model on it, no. But if you are an educator or a researcher who's just starting off, dabbling in some problems, you don't know what to do, I think this is an incredible resource that you absolutely can, could, and should use. In terms of challenges, there's probably a couple of things that are striking to me. The first that was mentioned already probably a little bit was a skill gap, even among educators, faculty, researchers, as well as the students who are trying to use this. What I mean by a skill gap is, I think, having gone through this process myself, because I did not start off as an expert in machine learning, but I kind of sort of picked it up along the way. It is easy to know just enough to be dangerous, but not know enough to know that you are dangerous, I think. And so that's kind of a careful place to be in. And you kind of want to go over that hump. So that's the skill issue. The other one that is probably very unique to again, my area of research, disasters, hazards, earthquakes, is AI ethics. And a specific, let's say, example that comes to mind, everyone in North America has a smartphone. Probably it's going to be an Android or an Apple, right? If one of these companies comes up with a way to inform you of your hazard, should it be that, for example, Apple users are uniquely, slightly have a better chance of escaping or reaching higher ground when an earthquake strikes versus an Android user or someone who might be homeless and not have phones at all, So there's a question of privatizing disaster management or resilience and things like that. So it's not something that I've thought about personally too deeply, but it is something that comes up in conversations, for instance. So that is one challenge that I would mention.
Kevin, I'm gonna actually pause. I gotta keep us going because of the time limitations. But we are gonna do the fastest lightning round. This is gonna be so fast because I'm gonna say that I'm a PI interested in thinking about AI in my research, and I text that to each of you. Hey, I want to do AI, and you're going to send me a text-level answer. So like 3 to 5 words. So who's got the mic? Okay. So you get to text me back like, I'm interested in having AI in my research. What should I do?
Coursera, EDX, Khan Academy, MIT, OpenCourseware, something like that. That's too many words already. But.
Okay, but you're telling me to get more education on my own via free resources.
Correct.
Okay, good. Brent. That's the one?
Those are my emoticons. I'm going to say ai.usu.edu because it's developing and eventually we should get there.
Okay.
Love it.
Colin.
I'll make, again, shameless plug, reach out to the ASC, the Analytics Solutions Center, so we'll help you solve these problems.
Go identify a unique problem in your own field before you tack AI on top.
Come talk to me. Because really, you need some more context. What's your data? What are you trying to do? And then I can point you in the right direction, or someone other expert.
Okay, folks, let's thank our panelists for their Okay, I'd now like to introduce Eric Hawley, who, as I said, is the Chief Information Officer for Utah State, and he'll be talking to us about the integration of AI resources across campus.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa.
If any of you don't think you've benefited from AI yet, but you're invested in the stock market and hope to retire, you got benefit today. NVIDIA's value, and so NVIDIA makes like a ton of these special chips that just work really well with AI language models. Their value went up $273 billion in the last 24 hours. So we're gonna divide some of that up. Dang, NVIDIA's not here. Next time. Next time. All right, here's a URL that you will never forget because it's that easy. AI.usu.edu. It might even show up on the screen here in a minute, but if not, it doesn't matter because it's that easy. Sounds like I'm selling toothpaste. This is our initial attempt, and we did this very, very quickly with help from, oh look, there it is. With help from Lisa Barreau, who organized a group of us, and someone had a basic idea. Hey, let's just get a landing page at USU to start. I just said landing page, that's the wrong word. This is a launching page. You're not gonna stay there long. It will start your search. A launching page whereby we can curate programs, resources, tools, and ability to partner with USU. We just launched this a couple days ago. This is the official soft launch here today. Sherrod Jones helped with it, Kevin Moon helped with it, Neil Legler from the Center for Innovative Design and Instruction helped with that. But every person in the room here today who is not only rich because of NVIDIA and the retirement funds, but also brilliant and smart because you are here today, have something to contribute. On that page, there's a link to contribute resources to this. If you're aware of something, would like to see something linked off of USU's top link ai.usu.edu page, click on that link and submit stuff. We'll review it and start populating. We're listing all of the centers and programs that we can find at USU that are involved or doing something in this area. We've started with 3 AI tools. Go ahead and click on the link because why not AI tools? This is just showing the ones that are available to USU today, now. One is Microsoft Copilot with data protection. It's easy, copilot.usu.edu. We'll get you there. That's how you can get ChatGPT 4 Turbo and DALL-E 3 and have an environment where it will not remember your queries or train on them. Still, just don't upload all your social security numbers because there's stuff we're still trying to vet there. But should be good. You can probably use bad words because it won't be recorded. It won't be wrong. Microsoft Copilot. Also coming, and if a special offer for those in the room today, still sounds like I'm selling toothpaste. Box AI is in beta. Box AI, box.com is Utah State University's document file repository for sharing. They are releasing all of their AI tools that will, in a secure, sandboxed way, you can point it at a folder, at a set of documents, and make queries to summarize or modify documents within Box. That's available by request on your account by clicking the link, request access to Box AI up there, or just send an email to license@usu.edu. Give me your A number, don't worry, A numbers aren't private sensitive, public information, share it with us, and we'll enable AI on your Box account. Again, let me remind you, most important thing, we want your input. You all have interest and expertise far beyond our little group that kicked this off. Click in there and suggest something that you'd like to see added. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And again, one of the things that I think is great about AI is it's going to bring all parts of the university together. We have to think about AI in teaching, in research, in training our staff, for the future of work in a university environment. And so I think it's a great thing for all of us to work and build on together. With that, I would like to take us to the next part of the summit, which is Donnie Elzinga, who's she's our external proposal specialist in the Office of Research. She has been with us now for about 3 months, 2.5 months, and she's doing some great work, and we'll show you some of the opportunities that the government has available surrounding AI. So Donnie, the floor is all yours.
Great. Which mic do you want? Thanks. We had to get all suited up for our Zoom folks. I'm so excited to be here today. Oh, we'll see. Like Brent said, the federal agencies are spewing money, so I have to have my papers up here because there is so much to talk about. So I have about 20 minutes today to talk about the federal funding landscape. That's part of my role, my newly imagined role within the Office of Research. In fact, maybe we'll just pop it right there. Okay, so if you can position yourself to see the slides, I did slides today because there's just a lot of information I didn't want you to miss. This is where I'm headed today. I want to start talking about federal priorities and some things we need to be aware of. I want to talk about the funding landscapes within some key federal agencies. I want to talk about some requests for information and ways that you can participate in the national dialogue surrounding AI. I want to talk about some notices of intent to issue, what is on the horizon that you could maybe position yourself and your team for. And then I want to end with some strategies to track fast-paced fields. So I know many of you are experts at that, so if you have ideas, I would love to hear them when we get there. Okay, I want to start with this executive order. In October of 2023, so just a few short months ago, President Biden signed the executive order on the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and use of artificial intelligence. It's a mouthful, but this is President Biden's guiding policy governing the development of AI. And I want to highlight, there's 8 guiding principles in this document, and I think they're important to notice because you'll see them trickle down into the funding opportunities that are available. So just a few of them. This AI work must be safe and secure. This AI work must promote responsible innovation, competition, and collaboration. This work is going to require a significant investment in workforce development that we've already heard about today. It must be in line with President Biden's dedication to advancing equity and civil rights. And then finally, the interests of Americans who use AI, their interests must be protected. So think like civil liberties, privacy, things like that. So this is guiding a lot of the funding opportunities we're going to see. And I pulled out one quote from this executive order. It's at the very end. It says, in the end, AI reflects the principles of the people who build it, the people who use it, and the data upon which it is built. I love that quote, and that's how I like talking about AI through that lens. Okay, first thing I want to highlight, this NARE pilot. It's the National Artificial Intelligence Research Resource. Has anyone heard of this yet? Yeah. Oh, Lisa has. We got it here. This is brand new. This is in like the baby nascent phases right now. It's acting on a direct order from that executive order and a task force that Congress authorized in 22. It's kind of has this preface that it's recognizing that AI can solve a lot of problems and change our world, and that there's a lot of people who don't have access to these resources, and it's trying to bridge that gap. So there are a lot of ways to be involved right now. Their goal is to have AI resources, data sets, models, software systems available on this platform. So right now, I mean, this is like a little baby pilot here. There are 3 ways that you can get involved right now. A couple of them are kind of quick turnarounds, but the first one is they're asking for information. How do you see yourself and your teams using this pilot? Like, thinking of research responsibilities and your educational responsibilities, how do you think you'll use it? That information will guide the development of this pilot. The second one, there's an opportunity to apply for early computing resources. Pretty cool. They're looking, I think they said there's like looking for validation projects, aligning the models with societal values, things like that. That one is due March 1st. That has a really quick turnaround. And finally, the third one, there's a list of pilot resources. You can go and see what's available. I went down a really, really fun rabbit hole looking at that. So I highly recommend you check that out. Okay, now I want to highlight funding landscapes. I had a hard time chunking it up, so I decided to talk about funding opportunities by some key federal agencies. They're just, every agency seems to be in a little different spot, and so the funding opportunities are a little different. So that's how this made sense to me. I want to start with the National Science Foundation. They seem to be a little bit ahead, not surprising, but the funding opportunities are just a little different here. Okay. The NSF, these are the 6 priorities that they say they fund. So I highly recommend that you be able to articulate where your work fits within these. So you see, like the first one is like these innovative, like the foundational research in developing AI tools. The second one, actually applying those tools to solving problems. The third one, democratizing these resources. Like that's where that NARE project I just talked about fits in, making sure everyone has access. The bottom line, making sure AI is trustworthy and ethical, developing the workforce, and really building partnerships. So I would recommend you can articulate where your work fits within there. In 2020, the next thing I want to highlight, and yes, this is a big information download. I had a really hard time deciding what to talk about today, but I want to highlight these National Artificial Intelligence Research Institutes. These were launched in 2020. There are 25 of these institutes across the country on focusing on a wide array of topics, from adult learning and online education to climate land interactions to cyber threat intelligence. On the Summit webpage, I have this linked for you. There's a booklet that outlines all of these AI institutes, and I wanted to just show you one example of what you'll see there. So this is the AI Institute for Resilient Agriculture. And when you go to the resource I have linked on the Summit page, you'll see the prime awardee, their partners across the country, and then a huge list of all their collaborators, public, private, university, all over, you'll see that. So these institutes, there is a funding opportunity opened right now. It's called Expand AI to collaborate with these. USU doesn't qualify. We're not quite the right institution, but I predict more will be coming. So that we will qualify for. So I recommend you go and check out these institutes. Each of them, most of them that I saw, have their own webpage, and you can see what they're doing, what they're publicizing. One even had their full conference proceedings published that I could watch. So I recommend you start building partnerships here and start following their work if there's a topic that fits within your work, and you can be positioned to capture some funding opportunities that are coming. Okay. I want to just do a quick rapid fire on some funding opportunities. There are so many. There are so many funding opportunities, but here's your rapid fire. This first one, Smart and Connected Communities. This one's due in April. It supports work that integrates AI technology with the natural and built environment. Like, for example, a recent awardee used AI models to predict and sense environmental distress for older adults and then implement some interventions. The second one, ethical and responsible research. This is a longer standing program, but they have a particular interest in AI, as we've talked about today, the ethical implementation of that. The third one, I know we had a geoscientist on the panel here, but this is a collaboration in AI and geosciences. They're looking to apply AI models to better understand the Earth systems. The past winners have incorporated AI into earthquake science, glaciology, and solar winds. The next one, smart health and biomedical research in the era of AI and advanced data science, really looking for novel ways to collect and analyze and sense data in biomedical research. I could just go on and on. There's so many. So if you go look on the Summit page, you will see a whole list of them and a link to a search and grant forward that you can check out. Okay, now I want to talk about the NIH. The NIH is in a slightly different, but nonetheless really exciting place surrounding AI. They are focusing, they say they have these 3 pillars. They want to focus on data, making sure the data is ready for AI tools, the ethics, making sure AI is trustworthy and ethical, and make sure we're developing the people. Like we're talking about, you hear common themes here. But this is the project I really want to highlight, the Bridge to AI. The NIH just invested $140 million and just announced their first 7 awardees in this program with the goal to prepare the biomedical research data. A lot of the data is not ready for these AI tools. Like I think you mentioned, yeah. Like some of it's missing some study criteria, and it's missing the biases that are from the study data. And so these tools, we need to bridge the data to this artificial intelligence. So there are no funding opportunities, but I think they will be coming. If this is your field, I think a lot of funding will be coming to help prepare these data sets. So if I had to sum up the NIH right now, it's probably with the words emerging and preparing to implement all these tools into all the data and projects they have going. I have a link on the Summit webpage that shows all the 27 institutes and centers and the projects that they're doing. So it can kind of jog your ideas and thoughts surrounding the NIH and what's happening there. Just a couple, here's a rapid fire of some funding opportunities that are open right now. There's a notice of special interest in addiction research. How can we use AI models to prevent relapse, addiction relapse, and how can we find new and interesting insight between the intersection of disease and substance use disorders? Same thing for the second one, surrounding HIV and the entire HIV continuum. This third one is they're looking to validate these tools that they're using in biomedical research, validating these AI and machine learning tools. And finally, helping us better using these tools to better understand Alzheimer's disease and aging and those related dementias. On the Summit page, if NIH is one of your key sponsors, I have a curated search that you can click and it will open pre-populated into the NIH site with all these key AI and machine learning fields, and then you could just add like your Alzheimer's disease or cancer, and it will help you find some really good opportunities there. Okay. I could not talk about the National Institute of Standards and Technology. This seems to be the home of, let me read it to make sure I get it right, the home of measuring AI safety and trustworthiness. They are home of this Artificial Intelligence Safety Institute Consortium. This is brand new. They just announced their members. And they are tasked with building the guidelines and standards for AI measurement. I don't know, highly check it out. My favorite resource from today is this AI risk management framework. I am not a data scientist, but I learned so much from reading that risk management framework. In fact, I even had to pull this out of the thing. They outline the entire life cycle of an AI, and you guys can tell I'm not a computer scientist when I talk about this, but like the life cycle of this AI tool from planning and design to all the way to the end, the impact. I learned a lot about, they're predicting harms that could happen all the way to how we can mitigate the risk. It's a great resource and it's linked for you on the Summit webpage. But they're, right now, they're laying these projects at NIST. They're outlining the groundwork and the guidelines and the benchmarks. I predict that funding opportunities will shortly be coming. So check that out. And then just one funding opportunity I want to highlight here is this is a long-standing program. It's the Measurement Science and Engineering Research Grant Program. But right now they've announced they have a particular interest in AI. So if measurement science is your expertise, this is a great program to check out. And I could go on and on. If you have a particular sponsor or federal agency that you work with, check out their website. Every agency seems to have a platform, a lens, a funding opportunity surrounding AI. Like the DoD, they requested $1.8 billion for research and development this year in AI. The Department of Energy has an entire new emerging technology office. The USDA has their own framework, this National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, all of these programs. It's a great way, if you go to their website, see what they're focusing on, see if there's a way you can position your work to be ready to help solve their problems. Okay, two more things. Requests for information. What are RFIs? They're a great way to participate in the national dialogue. A sponsor is looking for information from experts like you in the field. So there's a few. We already talked about the NAIR pilot and that request for information, but here's a couple more. The NIST, that agency we just talked about, they are asking for input on their Smart Cities program strategic plan. The NIH, they also just posted their strategic plan for data science. They're asking for input from experts. And finally, the NIA, they are looking for, I can feel it, they're like starting to figure out and look for information on how to apply AI tools to cancer immunology. So there's a couple requests for information that you could act on right now. And part of my role at the university is to keep my ear to the ground and know what's coming. And so I will keep the Summit page updated for you of these requests for information so you can continue to find out what's out there. Notices of intent to issue. Sometimes funders give us a little sneak peek into what funding opportunities are coming. In this field, it's very interesting. There are hardly any. I think it's because it's coming so fast at us. But I wanted to highlight just a couple. So because we are waiting for Congress to fully appropriate the money for this year, I think, is their deadline March 1st, I think. These two DoD programs have said, once this money gets appropriated for fiscal year 24, we are going to be looking for researchers to apply AI tools to epilepsy research, their epilepsy research program, and also this Joint Warfighter Medical Research Program. They're really looking for better ways to take care of our armed troops. Like they specifically mentioned, I lost my paper, telehealth support, virtual health, and decision support. So that is coming. Very, very interesting opportunity that will be coming as soon as Congress can pass the budget. Okay, I think overall themes, like I see it, and you kind of mentioned in the panel today, which was so fantastic, is there's kind of these two circles. This is how I imagine it. Correct me if you think it's different, but there's kind of these two circles happening right now. They're developing the AI tools while we are learning how to apply them. It's kind of, they're happening at the same time and they're feeding off of each other. So now is the time for you to start developing partnerships with collaborators, to start networking, to start keeping up with the field. So here's where I found a few best practices ways to keep up, but I would love your input if you have ideas on how you are keeping up with this incredibly fast-paced field. The first one, you probably already know this, but if you don't, you can create a saved search, like for example, like in Google Scholar, to send you alerts. And then if that annoys you, you can set a rule in your email to go to a folder. So you don't see it until bullet point number 2, you have set aside weekly time in your calendar to look at that folder, right? And even if you can't read all those articles, you can at least skim them and know what's going on. Make sure you're attending the major conferences in your field and in this AI field. And if you can't go to the conferences, make sure you're at least looking at who was presenting. What were they presenting on? And read those proceedings. And finally, I don't really like this title, Launch a Journal Club, but something like that. Maybe it's a way you can get your team or your students involved where they have a responsibility to follow certain things or read certain articles, and you get together regularly to review them. And finally, try to serve on grant review panels as much as you can. It's such a beautiful way to see what your colleagues are pitching, what they're trying to push forward, what they're talking about. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. Does anyone have any strategies for how they keep up with these fast-paced fields?
There's a Scholar AI plugin on ChatGPT.
Okay, so you got to see. Oh, did you say that? Say it in the microphone.
No, it's quite incestuous, but there is a Scholar AI plugin for ChatGPT, but I'm not endorsing it.
No endorsement from that method. I like it. Using AI tools to keep up. I like it. Awesome. Well, if you have best practices, send them to me. I would love to help support that. So anyway, that's what I have for you today. And please, if you have questions or comments, it's all linked on the Summit webpage. And reach out to me. This is part of my role. I'd love to support you. Thanks.
Thank you, Donnie. And I'm just going to echo what Donnie just said. She's building out a number of resources on our website to help faculty find funding. And Donnie, before you leave, and you still have a mic in your hand, remind everyone the new newsletter that went out last week that they can look for in their email about funding resources. Why don't you comment on that?
Yes, well, thank you. Let me start with, I am not a creative person. So thank you, a big shout out to our beautiful research communications team who helped me brand and name it, because I will not even say the name that I came up with on my own. But it's called Funding Frontiers. So it's a new newsletter. I'm trying to send it out twice a month with funding opportunities and news related to our USU community. I try to delve deeply into all the work that you guys are doing and really craft the opportunities. So if you have feedback, please let me know. And on the research page, it's under research development. You'll be able, under external funding, you can find it and subscribe or email me and I can get you on the list.
And on the website, you've set up automatic search parameters for specific fields. And so if you search on research development on our site, you'll find your way to a web page that, for example, if you're interested in, I can't remember the top, but health and well-being or something like that, we've set up these search engines that we have that are going to be consistently repopulating with new opportunities. I'm going to highlight that at the top of our next research updates that will go out in March. And so you'll see it there and be able to go take a look. The whole idea is this: we're trying to bring more of these opportunities, which we know is such a rapidly changing landscape, to all of your inboxes to help you identify potential opportunities for your research. And with that, thank you again, Donnie. And I just want to say, as we come to the end of this portion of the summit, in front of you on the tables, we actually wanted to help you spur discussion for this last part. The last part is socializing. And so we have food, we have beverages. We're going to encourage you to stay, have some additional food, chat. If you're new to the AI field and you just don't know what to ask, which I feel like most days of the week, we put some questions there that might help you just talk to your colleagues to learn more about AI. And so with that, I want to thank you all for being here. We're happy to have you here for the next little while to just enjoy this beautiful space. And we look forward to seeing some of you move forward with some AI-related projects. So thank you all for being here.
Yes, we made the setting up. It's one of those ones like it's such a good fit.